A quiet barn, a frightened girl, and a secret that could destroy everything. When the rancher stepped inside, he thought he was just helping. But what he discovered would change the night forever. Shadows move, strange growls echo, and a mysterious glowing mark hides a danger no one could imagine. Stay with us, because in the next scenes, you'll witness fear, suspense, and a shocking revelation that even the bravest could never expect. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Watch closely, and hit subscribe, because the full story will leave you on the edge of your seat. Every scene is more intense than the last. The barn door creaked open with a long, tired groan, swinging inward on rusted hinges that hadn't seen oil in years. Cold evening wind swept in behind the rancher, brushing past him like a whisper as he stepped inside. His lantern glowed a soft amber, cutting a thin path through the shadows. Dust floated in the beam like drifting spirits disturbed from their slumber. He paused just inside the doorway. Something felt wrong. The quiet wasn't normal. Not for this barn. Not for this hour. He took another step, boots crunching over dry straw, and lifted the lantern a little higher. That's when he saw her, standing in the far corner, wrapped tightly in a rough wool cloth. The edges frayed as if she'd been clutching it for far too long. The lantern's light barely reached her, but it was enough to reveal the tremble in her hands and the desperate rise and fall of her breathing. She flinched when she saw him, pressing her back against the wooden wall as though trying to disappear into it. Her eyes reflected the lantern fire, wide, wet, terrified. Not of him. Not entirely. "Please, don't take the cloth off," she whispered, her voice so soft the wind almost carried it away. The rancher froze where he stood. He wasn't expecting anyone here, especially not her. He didn't know her name, but he'd seen her around town, always quiet, always alone, always glancing over her shoulder like someone who'd forgotten how to trust the world. But he had never seen her like this. "Ma'am, I ain't here to scare you," he said softly. She shook her head violently, clutching the cloth tighter around herself until her knuckles turned stark white. The movement shifted the lantern glow, and for a split second, he spotted something beneath the cloth, something that seemed to push against the fabric from underneath. A shape he couldn't make sense of, heavy and unnatural as if it didn't belong on a human body. A chill ran up his spine. "What are you hiding?" he asked quietly, though part of him already regretted the question. She lowered her gaze to the dirt-covered floor. "If you see it," she whispered, "you won't ever forget it. And neither will it." The rancher's brow creased. "It?" Before she could answer, a sudden gust of wind rattled the loose boards of the barn, sending a sharp tremor through the walls. The lantern flame danced wildly. Somewhere deep in the shadows, a horse huffed sharply, its hooves scraping the ground as if uneasy. She squeezed her eyes shut, gripping the cloth like it held her entire world together. "Please, don't make me show you." He took another step toward her, slow and cautious. The air felt different now, thicker, heavier, almost pressing in on him. Something about the barn felt alive, listening, waiting. It wasn't just her fear. It was something else, something in the dark. The rancher raised his lantern, trying to illuminate whatever lingered in the far corners of the room. But as the light stretched out, the shadows shifted back, as if they were moving on their own. He took a slow step forward, boots pressing into the straw with a crunch that echoed far louder than it should have inside the quiet barn. She tensed instantly, turning her back to him as if shielding something far more precious than her own life. The dim lantern light flickered across her trembling shoulders, casting long, nervous shadows that danced along the wooden walls. "You don't understand," she said, gripping the cloth so tightly her knuckles turned white. "If you see it, everything changes." Her voice cracked on the last word, breaking like a branch under too much weight. The rancher swallowed, unsure why he suddenly felt the temperature drop. "I ain't here to hurt you," he said softly, trying to steady his voice even though a strange pressure tightened in his chest. "But there's something in this barn, something you ain't telling me." She didn't answer. She only breathed hard like she was fighting the urge to run or scream. The rancher lifted the lantern higher, hoping the light would reveal what she feared. Instead, it only showed fear itself, raw, honest fear carved deep across her face. He'd seen fear before, in cattle during a storm, in men during a gunfight. But this was something else. This was the kind of fear a person learned only once and never forgot. He stepped closer. The air grew heavier, Without warning, a sharp rattle tore through the wall behind them. The rancher froze. The horses erupted into chaos, kicking their stalls, snorting, tossing their heads wildly as if something unseen moved between them. Their panic sent hay flying into the lantern light, each piece glowing gold before falling like burning snow. Then came the sound, a growl so low it vibrated through the floorboards. It wasn't an animal's growl. It wasn't a man's voice either. It was something unnatural, something that didn't belong in the living world. Something old. The rancher felt the hairs on his arms rise. She clutched the cloth harder, nearly choking on a tremble that shook her whole body. "That's why you can't take it off," she whispered. "It's connected to that, whatever it is. Whenever it gets close, the mark—" She stopped herself, biting down on the words. The rancher's eyes narrowed. "The mark?" She shook her head violently. "No, please, don't make me show you. Once you know, it feels you. It follows you. It never stops." The wall thudded again, harder this time. Dust poured from the rafters. One of the horses screamed so loud the lantern flame wavered. The rancher's voice dropped to a whisper. "You're telling me whatever's out there, it's coming for you?" Her breath hitched. "It's already here." The growl came again, just outside the wooden boards. Slow and deliberate, as if whatever stalked them enjoyed the fear it was stirring. The very ground beneath the rancher's boots buzzed with the creature's presence. He reached for his holster, fingers trembling. "I ain't letting anything hurt you." She shook her head, stepping backward until her back hit the shaking wall. "You don't get it. This isn't something you shoot." The boards bowed inward under an unseen weight, cracking in long, jagged lines. The rancher held his breath. Something outside dragged its claws, metal scraping against wood. It circled them like a hunter deciding where to break through. He tightened his jaw. "Then we need to move now." But she only clung tighter to the cloth, her eyes full of something that looked very close to the truth he wasn't ready to hear. "You can't outrun it," she whispered. "You can only survive it, until it chooses otherwise." And the barn trembled. Again, this time as if the night itself was breathing against the walls. The door slammed so hard the entire barn shook, dust falling from the rafters like drifting snow. The rancher's lantern swung wildly in his trembling grip, throwing broken shapes across the walls. The horses screamed in their stalls, eyes rolling white, hooves smashing against wood as if trying to escape something they could sense long before humans could. He forced a breath. "I have to know," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if he was saying it to her or trying to convince himself. Her shoulders fell as though she carried the weight of a whole desert on her back. She turned to him slowly, her eyes filled with the kind of sorrow a person carries only after years of running. "Then be ready," she said softly, "because once you see it, there's no turning back, not for either of us." His hand rose slow and uncertain. When his fingers brushed the rough edge of the cloth, she flinched, not from fear of him, but from fear of what came next. The fabric trembled as he pulled. It slipped, fell, and for a moment, the lantern flame froze in the air, as if the world held its breath. The glowing mark on her skin emerged like a living thing. It pulsed once, twice, slow at first, then faster, brighter, spreading across her arm in burning lines that looked carved by lightning. The rancher staggered a step back, breath shattering out of him. "What in God's name?" he muttered, but the words died as the barn shuddered. The creature outside shrieked, not like an animal, but like metal being torn apart underwater, a sound so unnatural it made the rancher's knees weaken. The wall behind them bowed inward as if something massive pushed against it. Boards cracked. Nails snapped. Straw blew across the floor as wind tore in from every direction. She grabbed her arm, wincing as the light crawled up her shoulder, searing brighter with every heartbeat. "It's been following me for weeks," she said, voice trembling. "It doesn't want to kill me. It wants what's inside me." The rancher wanted to speak, to steady her, to steady himself, but his voice was gone. His hands shook so violently the lantern nearly slipped from his grip. The creature slammed again. The wall bent inward, splinters exploding across the floor. She looked at him with tears streaming down her glowing face. "If it takes me, it won't stop there. You'll be next. The whole town will be next." The rancher finally found his breath, rough and broken. "Then we fight," he said, though fear sat heavy in every word. But she shook her head. "You don't fight something like this. You survive it. Or you run." The creature shrieked again, this time inside the barn, its shadow stretching across the floor. Before its body even appeared, the rancher's lantern flame wavered, then flared brighter, as if even the fire knew danger had stepped into the light. And in that moment, as everything he believed about the world shattered beneath his boots, the rancher realized something terrifying. Whatever was coming had been waiting for him.